In 1845, a photographer took portraits of the officers of a British expedition, days before it sailed. The photographs survive. Every man in them died. 129 people went into the Arctic and none came out. Britain spent 40 years and a fortune looking for them and found almost nothing. But the people who lived there already knew what had happened. They said so in 1854. They were called liars, and the search went on in the wrong place for another century and a half. Start with how confident everyone was. Two ships, the Erebus and the Terror, both had already survived 4 years in Antarctic ice. They were the best equipped vessels ever sent north. Steam engines, screw propellers, heated cabins, 3 years of provisions, 8,000 tins of food, a library of over 1,000 books. Nobody involved thought this could fail. That is a part worth remembering. They were looking for the Northwest Passage, a sea route over the top of North America. On the map, it looked like a gap of a few hundred miles between known coasts. Nobody had crossed it. Nobody knew whether the ice ever cleared. Franklin was 59, and this was not his first Arctic command. It was, in a sense, his last chance at one. They sailed in May 1845, and Britain waved them off as a certainty. In July, two whaling ships met them in Baffin Bay, waiting for the ice to open. The whalers sailed south. That was the last time any European saw the expedition alive. Then nothing. One winter passed with no word, which was normal. Then a second, which was not. By 1848, Britain begins to search. What follows becomes the largest rescue operation of the century. More ships go looking for Franklin than ever sailed with him. His wife, Jane Franklin, funds expedition after expedition when the Navy loses interest. In 1850, a search party finds 3 graves on a small island. 3 sailors dead in the first winter. The graves are neat. Whatever went wrong had not gone wrong yet. In 1854, a Scottish surveyor named John Rae is far to the south mapping coastline. Rae is unlike the naval officers. He travels light, hunts his own food and learns from the Inuit how to survive. That last habit is why he hears what nobody else has heard. Inuit hunters tell him about a group of about 40 white men years earlier dragging a boat south. They were starving, they died along the way, and near the end the survivors had eaten the dead. The Inuit describe objects they were carrying. Rae buys some of them. They are unmistakably from the expedition. Rae writes it all down and sends it home. He is careful to say the Inuit were reliable. Britain does not want this, not the starvation, and absolutely not the last part. Charles Dickens, the most famous writer in the country, publishes an attack on the Inuit account. He argues that Englishmen would never do such a thing, and that the testimony of, in his words, savages cannot be trusted. It is not an argument about evidence. There is no evidence on his side. It is an argument about who counts as a witness. Rae is never given the recognition the other Arctic searchers received. His career does not recover. 5 years later, a search under Leopold McClintock finds the only written record the expedition ever left. It is a single sheet in a metal cylinder under a pile of stones. It carries 2 messages written a year apart by men who did not know what was coming. The first, from 1847, says the ships wintered in the ice and that all is well. The second is squeezed into the margin a year later in different handwriting. It records that Franklin is dead, that 24 men are gone, and that the survivors are abandoning the ships on foot. 105 men walk away from two ships onto the ice, heading for a river hundreds of miles south. They are hauling a ship's boat on a sledge. Inside it, searchers later find silverware, books, and slippers. Men dying of starvation were dragging tableware across the Arctic. Nobody knows exactly why. The kindest reading is that they no longer had a clear idea what they were doing. None of them reached the river. For a long time, the answer was lead. The tins were sealed with lead solder, and the bodies were full of it. It made a neat story. The technology that was supposed to save them poisoned them instead. More recent work is less certain. The lead levels were high, but so were levels in ordinary Britons at the time. What is not in doubt is scurvy, starvation, tuberculosis, and cold, and that they were fatal in combination. And the bones, when they were finally examined, carried cut marks. The Inuit had been right about that too. In 1854, in the report, Britain threw away. In the 1980s, a team returns to the island with the three graves and opens them. The permafrost has held. The men are not skeletons. They are recognizably themselves, 140 years on. One of them was 20 years old when he died in the first winter. The photographs of those exhumations are why most people have heard of this expedition at all. The ships themselves stayed missing until this century. Search teams looked where the Victory Point note said the ships had been abandoned. They were not there. Inuit oral history, recorded repeatedly since the 1850s, said something different. It said one ship sank in deep water to the north and the other drifted far south before going down near an island. In 2014, the Airbus was found in the southern location, exactly where the Inuit had said. In 2016, the Terror was found in a bay that appears in Inuit testimony by name. Put the timeline next to itself and it becomes uncomfortable. The essential facts were reported in 1854 by people who had seen them. They were rejected because of who the witnesses were, not because of anything wrong with the account. And the final confirmation arrived 160 years later, from the same testimony taken seriously at last. The expedition is usually told as a mystery. It was never much of one. It was an answer that nobody in London was willing to hear. If you got this far, you want the history that gets buried under the headlines. Subscribe and I will keep digging it up.